Good morning. Welcome to the Election Law Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. We are, of course, here today on Representative Gilda Cobb Hunter's bill, resuming testimony on 3822. Of course, this is the bill we started a few weeks ago. Representative Cobb Hunter gave us a good presentation of what the bill does, and then, of course, we had a lot of folks that signed up to speak, both in person and virtual. And unfortunately, due to time constraints, we did not get to everyone wanted to come back and make sure we hear from as many people as possible this morning. Certainly, as I've said over the last, I guess, 3 meetings or so, we've reviewed several election bills. Representative Cobb Hunter, Representative Newton's discussed a lot of her testimony and discussed a lot of options as far as what exists out there as far as a vehicle by which to look at how we conduct elections in South Carolina. And so we're going to continue on in that today. I would, just a couple housekeeping notes. If you are, and my plan is to do what I've done so far to this point, is to go back and forth between the in-person and the virtual so that we can, give everyone an opportunity that we can to speak. I would ask both in-person and virtual that you would limit your testimony to no more than 3 minutes. That's sort of been the model to this point. I'd say 99% of folks have strictly adhered to that. Maybe we've gone over a little, but everyone's really given, to my estimation, a good faith effort to give us their information as quickly as possible so that we can hear from as many people as possible. Also, another housekeeping note, if you're participating virtually, please remember to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. Also, please remember to mute statehouse.gov if you are watching via Teams. So with that, I think Representative Cobb Hunter's your bill, but you're going to defer to the very end. So with that, we'll get right into our speakers. Our first in-person speaker is Catherine Fleming Bruce. Ms. Bruce, if you would come up and turn on that there's a button up there. There we go. And if you would introduce yourself and what group you're speaking on behalf of, if any, and you are recognized.
Good morning. Thank you so much for returning this important item to the table. My name is Catherine Fleming Bruce. I'm speaking along with my colleagues at Carolina for All, but also with my organization, T-Novus Global Commons, that focuses on historic preservation and conservation. So I'm going to tell y'all a little brief story. In 2018, South Carolina faced a catastrophic hurricane named Florence. It impacted our state from the coast all the way up to the PD. The governor issued emergency evacuation orders, and when it was done, many counties were subject to devastation and many people displaced. One of the most heavily displaced areas was in Marlborough County in Bennettsville. So I was concerned, as many others were, about loss of life and property, and I volunteered. I was concerned also about the ability of these displaced residents to participate in upcoming elections. As you know, 2018, this happened in October. Elections would be coming up. When I wondered what I could do, a friend in the legislature suggested draft a bill. And when she said that, I said, boy, I guess I've said too much today. I need to be quiet. But I thought, well, I'll put together something and give it to her and see what happens. So I did draft some ideas with the thought of these displaced residents in mind. However, that wasn't the end. In 2020, an even greater devastation came, equally unexpected. The twin pandemics of COVID-19 and the murder of George Floyd both forced upon us a reckoning with all of our systems, among them our access to the vote. So this new bill, 3822, benefiting from many other drafts and ideas, and soaring above all of them, beyond all of them, to touch on many of the aspects of voter protection that would be described in greater detail by those testimony after me. What I ask you all to do is to embrace the flight trajectory that this bill puts us on. Let us be ready for this flight. Let us listen to those details of how we can free our voters from all forms of oppression, all forms of,
Okay, that would be described in greater detail.
I'm sorry, all forms of suppression. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you again. All right. I believe we have Heather Odom with us virtually. Ms. Odom, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. Thank you for being with us today, and you are recognized.
Wonderful, thank you. I am Heather Odom, and I am with the Racial Justice Network. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So when I think about all that this bill represents for the state of South Carolina and voters, I just can't imagine turning back the opportunity to not have this in place for generations that are looking to mobilize their vote. So I have seen being active with the Racial Justice Network, voter education, voter mobilization on all the things that happened during the pandemic and what the next generation is looking to do to have their voices heard. And it should be easy to do it, and it shouldn't be hard. And without this bill, it will be hard. It will be extremely difficult. And I can only imagine the conversations that all of us would have with the generation behind us about why they can't easily make their vote heard, registered, or even the effort made to do it. This bill has to go through because the generational impact is enormous. And I can't imagine having the conversations with our youth about why they can't do something. It should always be about why they can. And so, in particular with this bill, the ID cards, it should be easy to go and show your college ID and say, I'm here to vote. I'm here to make my voice heard. Without that, and without the ease of it, it just puts all the roadblocks in for the next generation. And then they become, not ready and willing to mobilize. So my testimony is about the generational impact that if this bill does not go through, what it will have. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning, for your testimony this morning. That will take us to, I believe, Elder James Johnson.
It's always good to be here. I'm Elder James Johnson. I am the National President of Racial Justice Network, civil rights organization. Also, for 6 years, being the state president of National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton organization, national state president here in South Carolina. I want to take you back to a comment that Tim Scott made on the State of Address on last night about America is not a racist country. Then I'll take you back to when I was a little boy to what my grandmother was telling me about the right to vote. She told me that they had to count marbles in a jar. They were poll taxes that they had to pay. All these obstructions that were put in place so black folks could not vote. Then we can go either further back to 400 years of slavery. And then we can fast forward to the Jim Crow law. All those laws was obstacles from keeping black folks to vote freely. And we can see around this country today, and especially in Georgia and Florida, where these bills are being passed to stop black folks and poor people and college students to vote freely in an election. For so many years, we've been fighting the fight of voting. A lot of my ancestors and my family members have died because we always was fighting the rights to have a free of obstruction voting rights to vote. So I look at Tim Scott's comments last night, and I see to where he still is in the big house. So I wanted, since he represents the state of South Carolina, I want everybody to know that he do not represent all the people in South Carolina, because my 40 years of civil rights, I've seen so many racism and still seeing it today. I've seen so many obstruction of stopping people from voting here in South Carolina. So I say this to you, that please, this Hunter bill is very important to pass. It will send a message to my grandkids and my great-grandkids that they can participate in a free election without any obstruction of their voting. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Elder Johnson. All right, I believe we have Susan Dunn with us virtually.
Can you hear me?
We can. You're recognized.
All right. My name is Susan Dunn. I'm the legal director for the ACLU of South Carolina. The ACLU is a nonprofit organization that has over 8,000 members in South Carolina. On behalf of my organization, I would want to speak in behalf of 3822. We believe this bill uses techniques that have been proven across this country as ways to expand safely the participation in voting. This legislature very wisely made accommodations in the summer of 2020 and in November of 2020 to expand absentee voting and expand early absentee voting, to make it so that everyone, every eligible voter, could use either one of those methods to vote. It was an experiment, but it was an experiment that worked incredibly well. And the results were nonpartisan results. Those changes didn't benefit one party or the other, it benefited all voters. That's what we want. That's what we want, is a system that works for all the eligible voters. No matter what their disability, no matter where they live, no matter how far they're away from the county seat, that they're able to vote. And we think that this bill would really move us forward in that way. And we hope that you will support it. But if you decide it goes too far, please make sure that you don't take us back to before what worked in November and September. At least protect that, because our voters know that it worked and it benefited the whole state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. All right, next up is Xavier Jones. Okay, Mr. Jones must have had to leave us. All right, Lawrence.
There you go.
Oh,
Mr. Jones is there.
Mr. Jones?
He's not there.
You invited me up?
Well, I've got, is Xavier Jones?
No.
Okay, so he's not with us. All right, so next up is Lawrence, is Mr. Moore.
Okay. Could I give Mr. Mustafa my turn? Because I spoke the last time, and he was here last time, wasn't able to.
That,
Abdullah Mustafa.
okay, he's on the list as well.
He is, but we might not get to him, so
Okay.
I'll take his slot if you like.
Okay,
to speak now. Thank you, sir.
we'll flip that. Mr. Mustafa, you're recognized.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mr. Mustafa, Abdullah Mustafa. I'm with several organizations, nonprofit organizations here in Richland County, throughout South Carolina. I am retired military. I have been on the front line serving people practically about 30 years. I have held an official seat as well. I was elected by the people once upon a time. And one of the things that I'm very clear is that this particular bill, I would say to you gentlemen, that it should be passed without any hesitation. The question that I ask is why are we here today? Why are we here today? That's the question that I ask. But I also ask, when officials come every 2 years, every 4 years to the community, asking us to vote for them, we ask them, are you serving the people? Are you serving the people? Each and every one of you, when you first ran for office, you told the people this is what I would do for you, for the people, by the people, of the people. And I ask that you look at this particular bill the same way when you guys first ran for office, when you asked the citizen, when you told the citizen that I want to serve you, I want to be for you. And by doing that, then you will be carrying out your promise when you first got in office. Because these days, in 2021, I can assure you, being on the front line, voters is really disappointed in their representatives today because of the fact that they have become self-centered. So I ask you to support this bill, support your constituents. And I would go on to say that if you don't, then that tells me that you don't support your constituents, that you don't serve your people, that it's not about for the people, other people, by the people. Because again, there's no reason at all today in 2021 we should be talking about any kind of suppression bill in regards to voting. So again, conduct yourself as if you just running for office again, and be about the people, other people, by the people, and support this bill. And hopefully we don't have to come back here again. Be the model, because South Carolina, it's time for South Carolina to be the model, because South Carolina got a long history of not being a good model. So it's time for South Carolina to be the model. And having said that, each and every one of you, as I often tell my circle, we all must leave here one day. We all must leave here one day. That's a promise. But the question that you have to ask yourself when you're serving these seats, have you did your best? Have you served your people? Or you just sat there just serving yourself? But leave a legacy so we can look back and say, these are the individuals who supported the bill, pushed the bill, and asked their co-partners to do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That takes us to, I believe we have Mr. Xavier Jones with us virtually. Mr. Jones, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
We can. There's a little bit of delay in the video, but we can hear you, so you are recognized.
Okay, I apologize for the delay in the video. Mr. Chairman, I do want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. And I also want to recognize Representative Gilbert Cobb Hunter. I want to thank her personally for stepping out and drafting this piece of legislation, but also her other colleagues that supported this bill. I will be very brief in my comments in support of Bill House 3822. I do believe that we should move forward with approving the bill and supporting efforts like same-day elections, being able to register via absentee and then go ahead and vote. No excuse. We've seen the success of the drop box in states like Oregon, so that folks have the opportunity to have their votes counted and not be in harm's way. We need to do a better job and look at corrections education so that we are doing our best to educate those that unfortunately are in the criminal justice system, but will be re-entering society. ID cards, excuse me, I sincerely apologize. Before I start, my name is Xavier Jones. I'm the first vice president of the Racial Justice Network, and I'm also executive director for Black Lives Matter South Carolina. And as I was about to speak about the college ID card being allowed to vote, it made me think about all the young people that I represent, all the calls that I get from young people just wishing to have their votes counted. And then lastly, no more witness requirement as we are getting our voter registration and absentee forms completed. Next, we've seen that COVID has allowed several states to change laws to make voting a lot easier in these difficult times. We've seen an uptick in the in voter turnout, and it would be prudent of us to make sure that at minimum we keep those types of procedures in place to make voting easier. Again, this bill represents progress, and I appreciate the progress that Representative Gilda Cobb Hunter brings to the table. And it also recognizes the fight that we are living every day in South Carolina as citizens here with the uphill battles that we have in the State House. So again, I applaud Gilda Cobb Hunter and her colleagues for what they are doing. I want to leave you with just a final question. I think I heard someone reference this a little while ago, but to the elected officials in the room and the decision makers, I would like you to look in the mirror and ask yourselves, what will my grandchild or my great-grandchild or my great-great-grandchild that knows that I was an elected official in office while we were dealing with COVID, while we were dealing with voter suppression, while we were dealing with racial animosity, what did you do to make a difference in the state of South Carolina while you had time to do so? And again, I thank you, Representative Gilda Cobb Hunter and your Democrat colleagues for doing all that you can. I encourage you to work with your colleagues on the other side of the aisle so that hopefully they see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'll leave you with a message from the Bible, my favorite book. And this goes to Representative Hunter and all the elected officials in the room and anybody that is standing up for the fight for the vote. Isaiah 41 and 10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. With the word of God, I will end my comments. And again, thank you for your time today. And I encourage you to support House Bill 3822. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're back to in-person. I believe we have Shanae Ryan. All right, we lost Ms. Ryan. How about Andrea Atkinson? Uh-oh. All right. Charles Glover. Hey, there we are, Mr. Glover.
I would like to say good morning to the chair and the subcommittee. I stand before you in support of the new bill. I just want to say that it is something that we should take in consideration. We've been to the mountaintop. We've had our chains loose and not being bound. So therefore, we're not going back down that road again to stop us from voting, giving us the right to vote. That is something that we should not even have in consideration of not doing. You're constantly putting roadblocks, stumbling blocks in the way of those that are behind us that are coming as far as exercising their rights to vote. And that's something we should encourage each and every one I too am an elected official. My name is Charles Glover Sr., and I'm also the president of the Charleston chapter of the Racial Justice Network. We've overcome a long time ago, even as a child, back in the late 60s after the Voters Act been passed in 1965. I could see myself walking down the streets of Charleston, South Carolina. My mom took me down there, seeing how whites was on one side of the streets, how black had to walk on one side of the street, seeing that no niggers allowed, no blacks allowed here, only whites only. I've seen this. We've been there, we have done that as a small child. Let us not go backwards. Let us go forward. Let us look to the hills from whence cometh our help. All our help come from the Lord. Let's not go back into history. Let's not go back into slavery. We've been there. We've done that. I've seen things for myself. So support this bill. Let us overcome behind this bill. Get your peers, the House, Senate, pass the bill. Let us move forward for a better America. Not take ourselves in consideration, hiding behind doors, voting on bills, which have things been happening in past states. I am an elected official too, serving my third term in my district. I know how it is. I voted for the people, voted in by them, and I support them highly. I will go to bat for them. That's what I've been chosen to do. They voted me to speak for them. I am their voice. So I'm asking you to be the voice of the people in your district, knowing that we don't even have to go down this road anymore. We've been there, done that. Give the people the right to do whatever they have to do, because even back in the days, all you need was a driver license, Social Security card. You can vote. Why all the changes? Because white superiors want to keep the foot on the black voters, because that's what it's all about, power. That's what it's all about. I'm a realist. I got to keep it real with you. It's all about white power. We know that because I've seen it. Being in politics for many years, worked under two sheriffs in Charleston County, I've seen it for myself. It's all about power. It's not about the people that supported them or the people that's in the areas in which they live in. So let us do what's right for the people and not right for us as elected officials. Hear the people and do what the people ask you to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. That takes us to, I believe Anna McDougall Scott, who I believe, did I mess that up? Amanda, I'm sorry. I've got Anna on the sheet and Amanda on the screen, so I apologize. But you are recognized. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you, and thanks. I really appreciate being able to be here this morning. I am Amanda McDougall Scott. I'm from Greenville, and one of the I'm sharing in support of H 3822 this morning, and I just wanted to share with y'all that of the several roles that I've served in my life. In 2020, I was fortunate that one of those roles was candidate for Greenville County Council in District 24. And during my time as candidate, I visited voters in every single precinct of District 24, and I made over 5,000 calls to constituents in District 24. And while I called and visited these voters, I was diligent about keeping a spreadsheet that I would know their vote, what their concerns were, and I would be able to act on their concerns later, whether elected or not. So I wanted to share that one of the top concerns that the voters had, other than COVID, infrastructure, racism, education, affordable housing, the environment, and growth, was the unfettered access to exercise their right to vote in the U.S. elections on or by November 3rd on 2020. So Americans were concerned enough about their access to voting that they brought it up with a potential future elected official during their unexpected and potentially brief call. So they didn't know that I'm a super curious person who loves to have a good conversation, would spend a ton of time talking with them if they wanted to. They just knew that I was calling them for whatever potentially brief amount of time, and this was such a powerful statement that this was at the top of their minds, even when the pandemic was started, because I started my calls in February or March of 2020. They were worried about how they and their fellow Americans would be able to make it to the polls on election day. They were concerned about access, which included the safety of voting during a pandemic. But when they were given the early voting option, they were also worried about being able to get a witness. While I was out in the field talking to voters at their homes, I had to tell several voters that their vote may not count or may not be legitimate under the recent updated guidelines because they kept changing and couldn't keep up. Some voters were concerned about being able to make it to the polls because they could not afford Uber, and they were unable to walk to the nearest bus stop. Many voters were afraid of the limits placed upon them by the justification needed for voting absentee, or did not know how to vote absentee at all. This was the case even when they knew that they could vote with absentee with COVID as a reason. But they were worried they would have to prove the reasons that they were giving for needing to vote absentee. Some voters were worried about the internet access or transportation to even be able to make it registered to vote by the unknown deadline. Many of them don't even understand or like how to vote absentee or what the rules are about when they should sign up and that sort of thing. So all this to say, I strongly believe that South Carolina needs H 3022. We need to improve access to every U.S. citizen's right to vote, and this is excellent step in the right direction. We have to make voting more clear and accessible for all U.S. citizens. We also need to take the fear of breaking rules or not measuring out a question of something that is guaranteed as a right to the United States. Please vote to approve H 3822.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. That brings us to, I believe, Mr. Robert McFadden. Okay, we lost Mr. McFadden. How about John McNeil? Mr. McNeil, you're recognized.
Thank you for affording me the opportunity to share some comments with you. I want to thank the committee for the diligence and my colleagues from the Racial Justice Network for their vigilance. I want to tell you what I don't come here as. I don't come as an activist or anything like that. I come here as an individual that has an expectation of human rights for all. Doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter if you're white, it's irrelevant. But what I do come as a registered voter who happens to be an African American from Charleston, South Carolina. And I'm a guy that still says the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't believe in all the tenets of it, but what I do believe is that it purports us being a democratic republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. We're not a democracy. We're a democratic republic. So that may be education for some of us that don't realize this, because you hear a lot of people saying, hey, we're promoting democracy. We're not a democracy, a democratic republic. Now, the key thing about being a democratic republic, it means that there's afforded representation for all, okay? With this bill, what I applaud and what I do support is the fact that there's a greater propensity for representation when you make it available to everyone and you facilitate it. We have a lifestyle of instant gratification. Well, why not make it voting the same way? A basic right. And anything that stands against that, I have a problem with, okay? When I take a look back at this republic and this representation that I purport and I hope that everyone has, I take a look at Reconstruction. And when we take a look at what has happened since our Reconstruction time frame from 1865 to 1877, we've only had 11 black senators, and 2 came during the Reconstruction period. So you're talking about 150 plus years, nearly 150 years, where we've only been able to have 9 senators, 9 black senators. I'm not the smartest guy, but I'm not the dumbest either. There's a disconnect. There's a disconnect. Now, where you find the disconnect is with these subtleties that comes across as laws. It comes across as black codes. You know, what we're seeing now in the other states, such as Georgia, these are subtleties that are intended to suppress the vote. These are subtleties that we must stand against. It's not a, like I said, it's not a black issue, it's not a white issue, you know? But I want to see equity, I want to see equality. Equity means more to me than equality. I want my share of the pie, and I want it now. And I want the opportunity for not just me to vote, but for everybody to vote. So I want to address the subtleties. I applaud you guys for what you've done with this bill, but there are still other things that we need to address, and thank you for allowing me these comments.
Thank you, sir. Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McNeil, I appreciate your comments, and I wanted to be very clear. Mrs. Cobb Hunter's bill is not for black South Carolinians. It is for all South Carolinians. The access to the voting box is for all South Carolinians. So I don't want to go down the road of thinking that we are up here doing a bill that only benefits African Americans. In the last election, when this state opened up the doors for people to vote early, and as it's not a secret, most African Americans vote Democratic. Democrats in this state lost seats. What Mrs. Cobb Hunter and this bill is advocating is allowing for every person in this state who wishes to vote to have every opportunity to vote. And so I just want to make that clear as we, advocate for this piece of legislation, that we know, yes, we as a community of black people will benefit tremendously. But I want it to be very clear that her goal is to ensure that all South Carolinians have a right to vote.
Thank you, Representative King. I believe participating virtually, we have with us, I hope I get this right, Mira Warshaver.
Pretty close. Let me get my camera on here. There we go. Mira Warshower.
Shower.
Warshower. I'm not sure.
The
if
V
you
looked
my
like a
picture
U.
or-
I apologize on that.
That's okay. It was pretty good. As I get a lot of creative interpretations of that spelling. So my name is Mira Warshower. I live in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm not sure which of these videos you're seeing. Are you seeing my glasses or my whole face?
We see your glasses.
Okay, so I'll hold it back a little bit.
There we
more.
go.
How's
That-
that?
We're perfect.
There we go.
You're
All right,
recognized.
thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I was I was waiting last time and I didn't get a turn. So I really appreciate this. And I'm just advocating for a functioning democracy, a representative democracy, and confidence in the elected government. And acknowledging that every citizen in South Carolina does have the right to vote. And in my view, this H 3822 only facilitates that right being extended to everyone, regardless of race, regardless of party. I'm close my camera. Sorry about this. And I just wanted to go through briefly these bullet points. Same-day registration is a streamlining of the process and would open it up for especially young people who haven't registered before to be able to vote and who maybe don't know the rules ahead of time. We're not really good about educating our high school students. So that would be really important, just to enlarge the pool of elected of electors, I think we're called electors. And then the no excuse, we have to be real. Absentee voting is just a facilitator for people to be able to vote for whatever reason. And you don't even always know ahead of time what's going to happen on election day. So if you can get your absentee vote in ahead of time, you don't know if you're going to be sick on election day or out of town, some emergency could come up. So this is really for everyone. Again, it doesn't matter what party we are, Republican or Democrat or whatever, independent, it's for everyone. The drop box seems like it would be really helpful to streamline the process for the staff in the election office. I know they get overwhelmed, long lines just to turn in a ballot that we could just turn into a drop box, a secure drop box that's safe and monitored and not open to any, I'm sorry about this, not open to any vandalism. So that would be important. And the cure, I have friends in North Carolina who were busy helping people cure their ballots. And we didn't have that possibility in South Carolina. And just a slight mistake in your ballot could just be negated and you wouldn't even be informed. I think this is important, especially as we do have more and more absentee ballots coming in, which I think is a good thing. I voted in person absentee, but I have a lot of friends who voted absentee by mail. And of course, the corrections. I mean, this is such a no-brainer. Every person coming out of prison needs to be able to vote. And how we talk about recidivism and people, continuing with a life of crime or being part of the law-abiding, community, and the right to vote is so key in buying into the process of this government, the confidence in government. The ID card, someone told me, I heard last time that there's a hunting license could be an ID, that a college ID couldn't be allowed. That just doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like it's a discrimination against the young. And the young, someone mentioned that they're inheriting the future as the young people. If they don't have confidence in the government, we have trouble. We have a problem. So a college ID card should definitely be a no-brainer. The witness requirement seems like redundant, and we have trouble with the witness signature, and then we have all the problems with curing the ballot. That seems like an unfair obstacle. And anybody can witness it, so it's almost meaningless to have it. So, I mean, again, I really thank you for the opportunity to speak and for having the second opportunity for the hearing, and I just hope you can see your way to support 83822. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us virtually today. All right, that takes us to, got time for just a couple more. I believe is it Woody Weaver? Mr. Weaver, you're recognized.
Thanks for allowing me to speak today. My name is Woody Weaver. I live in Lexington, and I'm represented by Chris Wooten. I am for 3822. I was raised by Republicans, so I vote in every election to their chagrin. I used to live in Pennsylvania, where they recently instituted no excuse absentee voting, and it's very successful. While it's great that college students can use their ID to vote, this should be done with an eye towards phasing out voter ID altogether later on, And it's interesting that you require a specific ID to vote, but in order to walk into the halls of power to testify on the same voting rights, I didn't need a thing. Although I did pass through a metal detector because we're worried about safety, or I don't know, maybe magneto. It just seems a little convenient. I almost faced discrimination in Pennsylvania when they had this voter ID law that was slowly struck down by the courts. And they required a narrowly tailored ID that I didn't have. And it needed all these underlying documents, like Social Security card, which took months to sort out. But the judge ruled first that need an ID, but they could ask. And later on in the fall, you didn't need it at all. But my dad, who's a lifelong Republican, stood up to that, and he said, "Hey, listen to the judge. I don't need an ID. I'm going to vote now." And that law was so bad that they took the governor's job from Tom Corbett and gave it to another man named Tom, which hadn't happened in like 30 years, an incumbent governor being ousted. When I moved down here, I had to suss out all the rules and everything and all the residency requirements. I found out later that you can get a voter ID with a photo on it if you ask for it at the DMV without a residency requirement. But you have to ask for it, and I think that the DMV should have to tell you that you can do that. But as for me, I kind of thought I would have to vote absentee anyway, and the post office messed up my ballot, so I had to drive up there, voted in-person absentee without issue, although someone did try to challenge my ballot after I got back, but I didn't do anything wrong, so it was counted. In conclusion, vote yes on 3822. It's a strong step in the right direction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. I believe we have Mr. Patrick Cobb with us virtually.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Very good, Mr. Cobb. You get to be our last virtual speaker today, and so with that, I will recognize you.
Sure. Glad to be the ninth hitter here before the inning is over, before you guys go into session. So thank you and good morning. I'm Patrick Cobb with AARP South Carolina. And AARP South Carolina, we're a nonpartisan membership organization comprised of more than 600,000 individuals, 50 plus across the state. We don't endorse candidates nor parties. And the 2020 election featured some of the highest turnout in over a century. Over 2/3 of eligible voters cast a ballot despite the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the South Carolina Election Commission, the 2020 election had the highest turnout percentage since 2008 at 72%, and the second highest turnout in the last 25 years. Voters 45 and older comprise 64% of the total electorate. And as a side note, I've worked as a precinct poll manager in Lexington County for the last few general elections, and I'm seeing these folks face to face when they come to vote. As you look at any changes to the voting process, any proposed statute changes must reflect and represent the concerns and needs of our 50-plus population. Several issues impact the vote of older and disabled people. Many older voters take advantage of the absentee voting process, including the over 700,000 caregivers who are often juggling work and other family issues. Eliminating any of the reasons for absentee voting would affect older voters who are 65 and older, out of town, or working as poll managers. For those who live alone and vote absentee by mail, obtaining a witness signature can be difficult. Absentee voter drop boxes are safe and secure. You heard last week from a Richland County poll manager who described the process that county used. I use the story of comparing the safety and security of ballot drop boxes to when I would go with my grandfather on Saturday afternoons to drop off his weekly cash receipts in a night deposit box on First Citizens Bank on Main Street, right down from the State House. He knew that his bag would be there on Monday when he went and made his deposit, just like your ballot would be there when it's time for it to be counted. The success of the 2020 election included absentee voting, absentee in-person voting, mail-in ballots, curbside voting, and day-of precinct voting allowed the state of South Carolina to conduct an election that did not compromise integrity or tolerate any fraud. South Carolina should establish and enforce uniform standards to safeguard the integrity of the electoral process. Ballots and voting processes should be designed so voters fully understand them and have full access to them. Our election process should not be burdensome, hamper access, and not disenfranchise voters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for participating with us today. We are getting pretty close to the 10 o'clock hour, and I want to make sure Representative Cobb Hunter has a chance to address us as to 3822, her bill. So with that, Representative Cobb Hunter, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And let me just say to all of those who came at the last hearing, as well as this one, who spoke virtually and in person, and thank you for being here. Very quickly, let me just say to you, I know that there are expectations that we will take a vote today. Let me assure you that we will not do that today, but I don't want you to get discouraged. You are seeing how sausage is made here in the South Carolina General Assembly. And so what I would say to you is that for those of you who were here before and who are here now, you may recall that both Mr. Newton and I, at our last meeting, made it clear that we wanted to work together on areas where we could. I want to suggest to you that, and I've shared this with Chairman Jordan, that I am more than willing to, in the interim, to have conversations with Mr. Newton about portions of his bill that are easily incorporated into 3822, and I am hopeful that we can do that. I am a realist, and I want to say to those of you who have taken your time to speak in support of the bill, that what we may well end up with may not be the product that is before us today, but I like to see that I choose to see a glass as half full as opposed to half empty. And so I've said all that to say, keep it up. This is not over yet. Please be vigilant. Those of you who are here and under the sound of my voice, please reach out to your legislator if you are in favor of this bill and if you are not in favor of the bill. That's the way the process works. But I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, the way you've conducted this subcommittee hearing. I appreciate you allowing others who were not able to speak before to have this opportunity today. And I would say to those of you who still didn't get your chance to speak today, I'm really sorry about that, but we are governed by time here. We do have time constraints. And I would hope that even if you didn't get a chance to speak, that you heard in the testimony of those who did speak sentiments that were similar to yours. And I would, Mr. Chair, if I'm in order, suggest that if you have additional comments that you'd like the subcommittee to hear, please feel free to share those with the Judiciary Committee staff. Notice I said staff, not the chair, because we're all in this.
Will be available right after.
So thank you all so much for doing this. I really appreciate it, and we're gonna do something. I'm confident of that. We don't know quite what that something might be, but I am hopeful that we will come up with a product that will make it easier for people here in South Carolina to vote. So thank you all so much for your civic participation in this important process. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Cobb Hunter. I can't express the sentiment any better than you just did, but I too want to add my thanks to the folks that have over these last several weeks participated with us in person, whether you took time to get down here to the State House and testify or whether you came virtually and presented before us. We appreciate the opportunity to hear from lots of folks from different backgrounds with different ideas. That's been very beneficial to, I think, all members of this subcommittee. Thank you again to Representative Cobb Hunter for your work on this issue. Thank you, Representative Newton. The only person who isn't here who's got an election bill like that is Representative Fry. So I'll let you two work with him to determine if there's something in there he needs to add to the equation. But again, and lastly, thank you to the members of the subcommittee for showing up, participating. This has been a little bit of unusual in that we've taken a lot of comment from the from South Carolinians and done this over multiple meetings. But I think we can all agree it's an extraordinarily important issue that deserves our time, attention, and our best efforts. So I want to thank y'all for that as well. And with that, we are slightly past the 10 o'clock hour, so we will adjourn so that we can head over to the State House.